There's a reason why for the last 13 years, startups overwhelmingly prefer to build on top of AWS. We have the largest number of services, making it easy for you to take on some of the biggest challenges with the smallest teams. We also have partnerships with the top VCs, accelerators, and incubators around the world, making it easier to secure your next round of funding.
I'm a solution architect with the AWS Head Start program. What we do is we work with startups in the education sector, and we help them build their services on AWS.
So We Power Tech is AWS's diversity and inclusion outreach program. The program is really twofold. One is to increase the number of underrepresented technologists within the industry, and the second is to provide a platform for them to be seen and heard.
If you're wondering how the AWS evangelism team might be able to help your startup, there are many ways. We're technically credible across our entire catalog of products, so we can help you figure out which services might be able to meaningfully impact your business. We also want to help tell your story. So if you're building something cool, we want to know about it and help spread that message to the world. So you might end up on stage at an event like AWS Summit. If you're a startup, you should also definitely check out the AWS Lofts. These are event spaces that are free to anyone with an AWS account. And you can treat them like co-working spaces, but the awesome thing about them is that we also have people like technical evangelists like myself, solutions architects that come and give hands-on technical workshops and sessions to help you learn how to more effectively utilize the AWS products and platforms that you're already building on top of.
We are a dedicated team of people that love startups, that we just want to come and help you with whatever we can, whether it be technical or business focused. We are here to help guide you and make sure that you do have a say in what's going on. We do get your feedback. We do bring that feedback to the service teams. That is what we're here for.
Daniel, please don't sell me out. Great, back to the top as I was presenting. Yeah, so Derek started Startup Grind in his own garage, invited a friend over who also wanted to just have a person to talk to work on their ideas. And that's how Startup Grind just grew in bits and strides until right now it's the world's largest organization of entrepreneurs. Basically what we do is we meet the way we're meeting right now. For us as entrepreneurs to have a person to share something with us. It could be a training, it could be something new they want to teach us, or just their life journey, how they made it, or rather how they faced the obstacles and managed to overcome it. So it's just that much needed talk that you as an entrepreneur needs to hear. So the main things that really drive this community and has grown over the years is the values that we live by. And as simple as they are, we give first, don't take, making friends, not contacts, helping others before ourselves. This is the guiding principle of how we work. That's why when we bring in speakers, we reach out to them at their own will for them to share what they have. And it's for us now to take out of them, or rather learn from them, the goodies that they have, right? So for Startup Grind, this is what has really helped us grow and expand. And of course, with us, we have sponsors that we work with and partners. This entire month, this entire year, we've been fortunate to have Amazon sponsoring the African team. Of course, you know Amazon. So AWS is the Amazon Web Services, is the full name for AWS. So they have their services they offer where we have free credits for you, especially if you're on this call with us. If you have your idea and you'd like to host it on the cloud, it could be a website, it could be you need some resources that the cloud system can help your business with. So Amazon gives us access to 1,000 free credits, 1,000 US dollars free credits. What that means is that you'll use their services for free to a tune of 1,000 US dollars. By the dollar rate, I think it's about 100,000 Kenya shillings. And with the cloud, it gives you the flexibility of growth, and you don't have to worry about security features. You don't have to worry. For you, it's just to focus on your business and get things done. Now, if you live in Eldoret and you've ever wondered if we have a co-working space, 64 office suites is your place to go. They're situated at Rupa Mall. And since you're in this call, and if you'd want to, you could reach out to me through my email, which you'll get at the end of it. Then we could always have the conversation, have you start. And being a partner to Startup Grind Eldoret, they offer to give you 3 days for you to just walk in there and get to have a feel of what goes on in there and how things work out, and see if it is something that would be of benefit to you. The package would also be good, especially since we have this partnership that anybody I refer would be given a rate that is quite affordable compared to the normal rate. So yes, Eldoret has co-working spaces. Nairobi people should know. So we would like you to also get involved in our community, because Startup Grind is not for me. My work is just to officiate the necessary bits about it. It's a community. I mean, it's for you, it's for everybody else, every entrepreneur, every business person, your friends that you know that should be here. The best way that they could benefit from this is if they get involved with what we do. First thing would be to sign up on our website so that they are our members. Second is follow us on the social media so that you could be up to date and know what we're doing when events are happening. And whenever we have some goodies coming from investors and, you know, the people who would like to help startups grow. Yeah, so Facebook, just Startup Grind Eldoret, Twitter handle Eldoret ACE, and LinkedIn. For those of you who are on LinkedIn and your LinkedIn always feel kind of boring, you could add Startup Grind page onto it. And then, you know, with LinkedIn, I think it has the best SEO for your own portfolio on the interweb if you want a really professional look out there. So LinkedIn, should really give it a second thought. As much as you have Facebook and Twitter, but LinkedIn is something that could really help you grow career-wise. With that said, according to our program, this next session should be something we call the Startup Spotlight session. Now, the reason why we put this was I feel like we have good startups out here, and what they lack is that viewership, you know, just for them to come out there and just be broadcasted to the world or to the investors. So this segment we created basically to serve our community in Eldoret. It's not something that is done by Startup Grind as a whole. It is, in fact, these are pioneer today. So you're all the pioneers of this segment. Yeah, so we want to give startups an avenue for them to let people have a feel of what they're working on. I mean, you never know if what you're working on is giving impact or is something good unless you put it in front of other people. And since we are also reaching out to so many, there are those who are already successful, you could always learn from them what they're doing right, what you're doing wrong, or what you could, areas that you could both interact with them to. So luckily we had one entrant into this segment. We sent out a couple, but I think one entrant really caught our eyes and decided that we'd have it for you guys to witness what they're all about. Now, the video I have, unfortunately, the audio can't be heard. Basically, they're called the Jenge Academy, and the initiative is quite interesting. What they do is data tagging. I don't know if you guys know of data tagging, but now they focus on the vulnerable communities. So they teach those people in the slums, those people who don't have access to computer skills, how to just do the basics of tagging and trying to help Google understand. You know, data tagging helps with machine learning. Yeah, like when you're searching for something, it should know there's a cup because somebody tagged it 1 billion times to say that there's a cup. To know that this restaurant sells ABCD. So once you go to that link, you get to know more about them. And I really liked the initiative and where they're starting from. You know, from the base of the pyramid, they say, right? To give these children a platform for them to grow out of. So the director is called Vasiliki. I hope I pronounced her name right. She's gonna kill me if I didn't. And she's the one in charge. She couldn't make it, but she was very interested in, you know, just being part of this and like the opportunity. So I said, why not share with you guys? So take your time and click on the link. And if there's anything you'd like her to know, you could let me know. I share it with her, or I could give you her details for you to know more about what they're all about. And with that said, are there any questions to this point from anyone? Any questions, concerns, additions, compliments, complaints? I'm trying to rhyme. Okay, if there is none, I hope my speaker is still around. Mercy, are you still there? Awesome, Daniel. Thank you for that. I'll let her know. I know she likes such a feedback. Yes, I think Mercy, are you still there? Yeah, I really liked. I attended some of their pitch. Oh, Mercy, you're back. I'm just trying to address Daniel as I was giving you time. Yeah, I saw them do their pitch in one of the virtual events, Daniel. That is Jijenge Academy, and I liked what they're all about. And it's it's a game changer for me. I saw it's a game changer. If it's an idea that could be really taken far and beyond, could really be good. So I'm reaching out to start a program to see how we could help them scale, and also have the right kind of people who could also help her in their venture. Yes. So, speaker of the morning, is it Mercy Etienne, a very wonderful friend of mine. One thing you didn't know is I once worked with Mercy at some NGO. It was quite fun, so I know on a personal level, as much as she's our speaker today, she's a good friend, hardworking. We hustled with her in the streets of Eldoret. It was fun. Good days, bad days, but at the end of the day, we really just, enjoyed it. And so with that said, without taking so much of your time, Mercy, I know you have some good stuff for us. The stage is all yours.
Cool, thanks, Larix. And I can just see my laptop is also misbehaving again while I'm trying to share my screen. So I'll cancel it and then hopefully start again. I don't know what the problem is. But while we wait for that to happen, as Larix has mentioned, my name is Mercy, and glad to see all of you here. And today I'll be talking about fundraising for startups, especially early stage startups. And so, I have a background in investment banking. As Larix has mentioned, I also have a background in business development support and technical assistance support, having supported MSMEs and early stage companies in both Sub-Saharan Africa and Asia to raise financing. So my role at Intellecap, I currently work at Intellecap, and my role is I co-lead the investment network, the angel investment network here. And I'm just hoping that, my laptop won't disappoint me. Okay, there we go. Right, anyway, so I'll just talk through it. And then once it comes up, I can just share my screen again. But yeah, I co-lead the angel network here within Intellecap with my colleagues. And ideally what the angel network is that we do run a network of angel investors. Currently, we have about 50 angel investors in the network, all looking to invest into early stage companies. And when I say early stage companies, I mean from about USD 50,000 all the way to $1 million. Though the sweet spot that we've found is they do invest about 200K and 300K. And I know these may sound foreign to you, and that's sort of what we're going to sort of debunk as we go through the process, so that you understand what investing in early stage company means, how should you prepare yourself for that, and where should you get this financing from. So those are sort of the three main buckets that I'm going to use, or rather to talk about today. And then in case you have any further on follow-up questions, feel free to hit me up, either personally or engage in Intellecap on a larger level, or rather on a corporate level. So Larix, if you could just talk a bit through this first. I'm trying to figure out. I'll have to log out and then come back in.
Yes. So I know for this mainly you are in the business arena, you're in the entrepreneurship arena. and there are things that you'd like to gain out of this, right? So if through the chats you could just put it on there so that it would be more of a conversation. One thing with this platform, Bevy, you can only see us. For you, we can't hear you. For now, you can only do the chats. But maybe once the speaker is done, if there's enough time, we could go to the networking rooms where we could have an interaction. But that is depending on how much time we'll spend on here. So for now, the chats is your sword for us to really interact. So if you have things that you'd like us to talk about, or rather to address, maybe just throwing in the chats. And I see Daniel is doing a good job. Daniel, thank you so much. This has to go all the way to the top. And Esther is also helping you out there. So yeah, I welcome any questions and concerns, and let's make this a wonderful experience for you. Yes, I see our speakers trying to get back in. There you go. Welcome aboard.
Thank you so much, Larry. So let me just try
your audio.
one more. Can you hear me?
Good.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, perfect.
Yes.
So let me try one more time to just sort of share my screen here. I really hope it works this time round. Great. Can you be able to see my screen, everyone?
Yes. Quite
perfect. Well. Great. Yeah. So as I mentioned before, today my main objective here is to talk about, how do we fundraise for early stage companies or startups? The what, how, and when. And so I was talking a bit about, us as Intellecap. And Intellecap is generally an advisory firm. We are an Indian-based firm, formed about 19 or so years ago in India, but just recently replicated the model into East Africa and Africa. So we did come to Africa about 8 years ago or so. And ideally, we work in three-pronged areas. So if you can see from my screen, we work in the areas of capital provision, knowledge, and networking. And if I could just start with the knowledge side, we do work with different developmental partners. So for instance, World Bank, for instance, AVPA, different developmental partners, GIZ, to sort of provide them with developmental consulting or strategy consulting. Ideally, our work culminates into research papers, white papers, and thought leadership papers. So that's what our work covers around the knowledge piece. And then, as I was mentioning before, around the capital side, we do facilitate investments for both early and growth stage companies, through our investment banking solutions. Again, as I mentioned, we do run an angel investor network here, and probably some of you have even heard of different angel investor networks within the region. So Uganda has one, Tanzania has another, and Kenya has also, whether you've heard of Victoria Ventures or not, that's another angel network that's based here in Kenya. But ideally ours, we do run it here at Intellecap in-house. And then lastly, the other third pronged area that we work in is the networking side, where we do host our annual Sankalp events. Ideally, the themes of the conferences are to, curate different thematic areas where we have different collaborators and stakeholders come together to speak about different themes, especially affecting the ecosystem. So that's how we as Intellecap work. And I'm happy to take any questions as I move along. But to the main reason why we are having this, and I'll time myself here so that I don't go overboard. The main reason why we are having this is to sort of look at when to raise capital, who to raise capital, what does an investor look for, and what are the capital instruments available, at least in this market. So let's start with the first one, when to raise capital. And I'll pose this question to you guys. Have you raised financing for your startup before? And if you have, just kindly sort of, text me in the chat here. So I can see, Daniel, have you raised financing before or supported someone to raise financing? If you just type it on the chat. Elias, have you raised financing before? Are you looking to fundraise? Alvin as well. If you just quickly do that in the chat, that would be lovely. So I'm just waiting for those chats to come in. Yes, I've supported someone to raise financing before. Great. Daniel, if you mind, what type of financing was it? Was it grant? Was it debt? Was it equity? Was it a convertible? I'm just waiting for everyone to give me a quick chat. An equity-based financing, great. Elias, have you raised financing before? And it's also okay to say, okay, I don't know what exactly that means, because that's what we're going to debunk in this session. So if you don't know, please feel free to say, Mercy, yes, I do not know what that means. So I'm just giving you maybe 30 more seconds so that I can see one more chat come in. Great. Yes, from Elias, I've raised before, more of debt. Okay. Elias, if you don't mind me asking, was this from a bank? Was it from a microfinance institution? Was it like, where was it from? Quickly. Yes, Alvin. Alvin, you've been trying to raise for the past 1 year. Okay, and decided to bootstrap. So that's great, actually, and we'll be talking about that in a couple of minutes from now. And some of the reasons, maybe some of the reasons why it has been a challenge for you to specifically raise financing. Okay, great. And then oh, it was from close friends. Great, perfect. All right, so yeah, so yes, that's sort of what you're going to debunk. Where do you raise from? Is it equity? How should you know when to raise? And you know, stuff like that. So yeah, so for a business, when do you know to raise capital? Usually there's many factors that should tell you, or you, someone who's supporting an entrepreneur, when to support this company to raise capital. Most of the times entrepreneurs come to us and they're like, oh, we need money. But when you actually go down to drill, really their problem is not capital. Their problem is maybe operational efficiencies. So if they fix something in the model or in the operations, then they would not necessarily require that capital. Obviously, capital is important, but sometimes is it the only solution? And I'll recommend here a book that says Starting Lean. That's a book that sort of tells you, the entrepreneur, when how do you build a business, especially if you do not have the amount of capital that you require. But that aside, when you know how to raise capital is, first of all, if you've really done a market assessment or a needs assessment in the market and realize that yes, your idea or your business actually, customers are willing to buy into the product or service. Meaning there's customer validation of your product or service. If you come to us even or any other investor and you say, yes, I'm looking to raise money, the first question would be, has it been validated by the customers? Number two, when do you know how to raise is if the market you're intending to serve, you as an entrepreneur, is large and profitable. What I mean by that is, if you look at, if you want to expand from Eldoret to Nairobi, or you want to expand from Nairobi to Eldoret, and you've proven in your mind that, yes, this is an idea or business model that would actually work in both regions, then the only thing that you're lacking is capital, then that's when that's the time for me to raise financing. Number three is, your business is growing, which is sort of related to number two, but you do not have that necessary capital to support that growth, then that's when you start fundraising. And the most important, which most entrepreneurs lack, is you already have a plan in place. And when I say a plan, is not what you're going to do or execute in the next 2 months, but really in the next coming few years. So I mean 5 years, 3 to 5 years. So your business plan should be able to cover your operational plan for the next 3 to 5 years. And then finally, similarly, you should also have a financial plan. And we'll talk about why a financial plan is important, because from the financial plan, that's when you get valuations, and that's what investors would then use to value your business. So without boring you too much, I'll go to the next one, which is why do you need that capital and how much do you need that capital is also two important things that you should consider before you start fundraising. So why you need that capital is, for instance, if it's for growth or expansion, as we've mentioned, if it's for purchasing capital expenditure or assets. By capital expenditure, I mean land, buildings, fixtures. If it's for operating expenses, what I mean by that is, are you looking to hire someone in the business? You know, are you looking to market to increase your marketing budget, etc.? Are you looking for the financing for working capital, etc., etc.? Then how much do you need? I think this one we will discuss in depth on a one-on-one basis if you're quite interested. But ideally, you know, what we do is sometimes entrepreneurs come to us and they say, oh, I've gone through my business, I think I need 1 million. For sure, I need 1 million. But when you go to actually look at the business plan versus the financial plan, and then you know, come down to it, you realize, oh, they actually need 2 million. So it could either go up or it could either go lower. So you need to do both a bottom-up approach as well as a top-down approach to then understand how much exactly do you need to run for your business. And something quite important here is, you know, that yes, you should be looking to raise financing that can give you a runway for you know, about 3 or 5 years or so. Meaning, if you're fundraising, it should not just be I'm fundraising to expand to Eldoret. So for this month, I just need money for this month. No, it should be money for the next 3-5 years. And one of the reasons, as I think you know, Alvin mentioned, is because it's very hard to fundraise in this market, and so you need capital that can give you, you know, a longer runway period. Yeah. So that being said, and please feel free. I'm just looking at the chat. If you have any questions, please feel free to type them in. I'm happy to address those. So yeah. So now that you realize, okay, now I need to fundraise. The next thing is, who do I fundraise from, especially in this market? So yeah. So as Elias mentioned, your first close contact is the family, friends, and fools bucket. So usually it's you know, someone who can be able to give you a loan or, you know, grant financing from your closest friends. So that's actually the first place you go to when you're looking to fundraise. And then after that, you go to the softer side of things, which is, you know, grant providers, awards, incubators. For instance, incubators give financing out here. Village Capital gives financing. NILAB, depending on the program you've, you know, enrolled in, gives financing as well. Growth Capital as well. So there's a couple of accelerators that would ultimately give you financing. TechBridge, which is based in Mombasa, also gives financing. So yeah, so that's sort of the softer money, and this is money that you would ideally use to either prove your concept further or you know, get, you know, your minimum viable product running, etc. So usually that's the category. So you cannot necessarily come to a VC fund or a PE, meaning when I say VC, I mean a venture capital fund or a private equity fund, to look for financing, yet you've previously never raised. And I'm not saying it's not. I'm not saying if you do that you cannot raise financing, because some businesses have been built very solidly to a point where when they approach a PE VC without necessarily having raised, you know, the softer side of money, they're still given money. But it's to you as an entrepreneur, it gives you, you know, first-hand experience on how to, you know, treat commercial financing that is external. And that's why even if you come to us to help you or support you facilitate an investment, we would ask you, have you raised financing from elsewhere before? And usually if it's no, then we are not quite confident to take you forward, because we are not aware, or we are not, you know, confident that yes, you'd be able to manage that, the financing, the commercial financing to a T. And then after that, then you now start looking at things like debt and equity. And debt is, you know, and I specifically want to speak from my own experience. These are venture debt funds. And then equity, you look at angel investors, and we'll see the hierarchy, you know, the hierarchy of such financing as we go. But I mean, angel investors, venture capitalists, and private equity funds. But before you even do that, then some people come to me and ask me, okay, Mercy, this is all good. We are very excited that you're telling us these things, but really, where are these investors? I've never met one in my life. So yeah, so meeting these investors is quite easy. Actually, you'd be surprised. So by the number of networking events that you attend, that's when you meet these investors. LinkedIn, you could be surprised at how many people actually respond to LinkedIn messages. So yeah, so these are places these are low-hanging fruits that you could sort of take advantage of and then start. But before you do that, you need to have an investor tracker. Entrepreneurs, even entrepreneur support organizations, we at Intellecap also keep our investor tracker. Investment bankers keep the investor tracker. You as an entrepreneur in that case, then you should have an investor tracker. And what do I mean by an investor tracker? An investor tracker basically says the name of the investor, the size of the investment, their previous portfolio companies. When I say portfolio companies, is where have they invested in before? The stage of companies they actually invest in, what's their geographical focus, and then what's the sector? Have I said sector focus? Yeah, and the stage of the businesses that they actually invest in. So that's as an easy Excel file. So you have 6-7 columns indicating all this, and most importantly, and these you can dig deeper into much further, or you could reach out to me on a one-on-one basis. But what we say, the life of a fund. The life of a fund meaning most commercial investors, and I could demonstrate this to you, hopefully you'll get my drift of thought. Most investors are given money by other investors to manage for about 7 to 10 years, depending. And so if you approach an investor who is in their 6th year of financing, yet their fund is 7 years, the life of the fund is 7 years, it means it gives you 1 year for you to actually exit the investor. So meaning, and I'm happy to take questions on this if it doesn't make sense to you, but if you go into that, into that fund quite late, is the 1 year enough for you to actually grow your business, make it profitable to a point where you're giving returns back to the investor? Maybe, maybe not. But that's something you should, equally consider. So you should also equally consider the life of a fund. In case there's any questions around that, I'm happy to take it. But ideally, that's what your investor tracker should consist of. I've given you some examples of data sources where you could get this type of information. So GAST, AngelList, VC4A. Where else can you get this type of information? AngelList, events. I know Startup Grind has networking events. We as Intellecap also equally, have an event. In fact, it's coming up in 2021, March 2nd to 4th. And that's just a shameless plug. But if you're willing to volunteer in the summit, if you're willing to come on board and support the session, we're happy to take you on board. But yeah, ideally these are places where you can meet potential investor, and it can help you keep a tracker or make your investment tracker more robust. And obviously through different incubators, accelerators as well in the market or in the region. Yeah, so I've sort of spoken about this. I'm very cognizant of time here. But yeah, so as I was mentioning, how do you identify those relevant investors to you? So after you've already put, an investor tracker of maybe 100, 150 names, then you come back and now start sifting through. So it's more like a funnel. So you look at portfolio companies. If the investor technically invests in healthcare and your business model is agriculture, then clearly that investor is out of the list. Yeah. Then we go to the second. And please feel free to tell me on the chat if I'm boring you as well. If I'm boring you, please tell me, or if you need a coffee break, please tell me. So if the investor if you look at the past investments they've made, and the investment is maybe a competitor of yours. So for instance, if I'm looking at Safaricom Airtel, the investor has already invested in Safaricom, and you're an Airtel in this scenario, then is that an investor you want to go to? Probably not. Unless you're also looking to exit your own company. So yeah, and you want for them to match on, at a larger level or a larger scale, then so is it part of the same value chain? Sometimes investors love investing into what we call a vertical chain, meaning if I have invested in a company, assuming it's what, Brookside, for instance, and this is just an example that I'm making, and Brookside its sole business is just to distribute milk, nothing else. They will look for a company then that does the processing of milk, so that the investor can be able to own the whole value chain. And then further down the line, they look for a company that actually collects milk from farmers themselves. And then ultimately, they invest in a company that supports dairy farmers. So if you look at that, the investor has invested in the whole value chain. And that's the joy. So that's, first of all, they diversify. They diversify the investment in case of any risks. And then second of all is because one other company will be able to support the other. So the point that I'm trying to make here is, please keenly look at the portfolio companies, whether it fits, your own company. Number two, you also need to look at the recent exits. When I say exit, is every investor is in it to make money. So they're not, even the small angel investor that you think is patient, at some point they're in it to make money, as long as they're not grant financiers. But even if you look at the market now, unfortunately, grant financing is drying up in the market. So most grant finances and philanthropists are actually moving towards sustainable impact investing. And so some of the grant finances do milestone-based financing, some others do returnable grants, etc. So they are also in it with their own objectives. So you also need to look at how are these investors exiting their investments, and is that a mode you would choose for your own company? So for instance, if most of these investors are buying out, and we'll talk about exits much later, I don't want to go into this one, but if it's a secondary sale, or the shareholder usually buys them out, etc., it's something you need to evaluate and see whether that investor is fit for you. Number three is you look at the team. You as the entrepreneur, you should look at the team of the investor. Most entrepreneurs usually love, or a team that already has previous entrepreneurs in the investor team, meaning they're able to understand your struggles, etc. You should also look at someone who's able to add value to you, and not just necessarily be a silent entrepreneur, a silent investor rather. So yeah, so that's something you should look at. The stage of financing I've mentioned before, the stage of the fund, meaning how many years they have left before they exit, and then where does their money come from? If you look at investors that get their money from family funds or family foundations, or they're more likely to stay in an investment more longer, meaning they're more patient with their capital compared to other investors who get their funding from limited partners and general partners who are more commercial in nature. I hope this is making sense to you all. So I will pause there and then see if I have any questions. Okay, so yeah, so I'll pause there. So yeah, so we have, what if your business does not align with an investor tracker of someone that's what if your business does not align with an investor tracker of someone that looks promising? Then in that case, they're not really for you, right? I mean, if your objectives are not aligned with the objectives of the investor, yet they're really, really promising. I mean, they're disbursing funds yesterday, but they do not really fit, they do not really fit your sector. They do not really fit. The stage of financing is quite late. Then really that's not an investor you would touch first. So there's one slide that I have that says, Equity financing is more like, marriage, right? So even if you see a beautiful chick or a beautiful lady who has the most potential, but unfortunately they're married, then honestly that chick is not for you, right? So it is what it is. Yeah. So and then I can see, okay, great. There's more questions on the Q&A icon. Then there's how easy is it to access investor background story? And that's why it's not easy, I would say, but that's why you need to align yourself very well with people who are aware of what's happening in the market. This is information that an investor would not necessarily put out there and say, oh, by the way, I have 7 years life of a fund and I'm in my 6th year. That's not something that would easily put out there. Or I think what you can find in their websites are portfolio companies. Basically the companies they've invested in before. But that's how you need to have like some skill, some sleuthing skill. So basically go to if for instance, they've invested in what company? Dijenge, let's say Dijenge, now that you've used it. Then you need to go and speak to Dijenge and say, hey, I see, XYZ invested in you. Could you tell me about their background? What are they looking for? How do I align myself to receiving financing from them? So basically what I'm trying to stress here is that there's really need for you to have very good networking skills, both with other entrepreneurs within your ecosystem or within your market. And number 2, have very good networking skills with other investors or investment bankers in the market who can provide you with this information. Then I can see one more. Is there an average duration for exit? Sometimes, okay, so yes and no. The most funds that I've seen in the market are between 7 to 10 years. That's the life of the funds that I've seen. But that notwithstanding, they are evergreen funds in this market. So if it's an evergreen fund in the market, they would not necessarily give you a finite exit timeline, but they would give you sort of, they are more patient. But for a more commercial investor, that means a PE or a VC, depending on the life of the funding they have, then they have a finite, a finite exit time period. And of course, also depending on the capital that they give you as a business. So if it's more, more larger capitals, then they would give you, how much? Oh, sorry. Yeah. So they'd give you a finite timeline. But that's something you will honestly negotiate with the investor. And we'll talk about negotiation sometime later. Hopefully I'll have time because I see I have, I think, 6 minutes or so. So that's that. Then how much equity is too much equity to give? If I have time, I'll take you through how do you know what percentage to give in your business. So ideally, if you're getting an equity percentage, is how do you calculate that? There is a formula. I hope that English is quite correct. Yes, there's a formula that can help you get a percentage of how much equity you should give. However, this is the caveat. Remember, for early stage companies, it's not really about the formula. It's not about the formula. It's more of, what does the investor feel about your business, and it's more a gut feeling for them. Because they come in early when the business has really, really, small traction or very minimal traction rather. So really it's about their gut feeling and where they see this company going. So the formula can help you know, okay, this is the amount, this is the percentage that I should give. But more often than not, it's more about the gut feeling and them betting on you. Think about investment as, a betting game. So it's more the gut feeling.
Okay, Mercy, if I may maybe just add why I asked that question. As a startup and you're growing, equity is something that is always on every startup's mind. And an investor could be more knowledgeable than you are, especially if you have a very good idea. And we have an example that happened here in Kenya. I won't say the name because you never know where this video will go. And maybe the person wasn't aware of, if you give out this much of equity, the investor could promise some good money because they've seen something that you maybe are not aware of. So when do we say that, okay, fine, as much as there's a formula, when is too much and when is just, That's the balance.
Yeah, that's a very good question. And the reason I say that is because unfortunately, ignorance is no defense in this case, and that's why we have sessions like this, right? So you can't say, for instance, I know of a case that someone gave 40% of their company as equity, and they had only received 20K. At that point, obviously, if you look at where the investor was coming from, they really came into the business very, very early. And so for them to take 40%, it made sense because of the valuation at which they were. But obviously, the investor had seen great potential for this business in future. And that's the risk he was willing to take. So they were willing to say, okay, you know what? I'm coming to you at this early stage. I'll give you the 20,000. And this is the 20,000 US dollars. And then much later, when I see potential, then I get my return. That's unfortunately where we find ourselves as, early stage companies. There's really not running away from this, unless you're like Alvin, who says, okay, you know what, I'm going to bootstrap, and that's it. Unless you choose that route, there's really no running away from it, because they say, with great risk come great return, right? And unfortunately, if I am an early stage investor, I am usually taking up more risk because I'm not sure whether this company will actually succeed. I mean, I could have seen potential, but that potential to then turn it around to become a viable business may be lacking, right? So yes, I am still betting on it. And so if it actually pays off, then it pays off. So unfortunately, there's no running away from it. So yes, there's a formula that can quote unquote guide you, or give you sort of a neighborhood from which percentage you should give a shareholder, but that should not be the only consideration. Remember, this is something that you have to negotiate on, especially if it's a pure equity investment. It's negotiable. The terms are also negotiable. Remember, when you're given an equity investment or a term sheet, it's something that you look at. Of course, it's not a legally binding document, but it's something you look at and say, okay, do you want both price? Do you want? So there's things that you as an entrepreneur could gain that are not necessarily monetary per se. So yeah, that's a tough one to answer, but it is what it is. That's what I'm trying to say. Yeah, and then you're asking, can you buy back all the equities? Depending on the exit route you had, negotiated with the investor in the beginning, then yes, you could buy back all the equity. So all the equity of the shareholder that invested. So I don't know, Larry, if I have maybe a few more minutes, or should I close it at this point? I have a couple of more slides to take you guys through. So a couple of examples as well. So
I think I see your audience really getting some good. I think it's a forgiving audience, so you could just please go ahead. I see it on the chat, so I have no power right now. Just keep on, and then we'll see how.
Okay. Good.
Yes.
All right. Great. So this is this slide was just an example to help you see where do you raise from, and then depending on the stage of your business. If you have time, please, and I'll put it somewhere here in the chat. If you have time, please go and check out Village Capital Viral Pathway. If you do not necessarily understand what stage your business is at, like you do not necessarily know how to define yourself, do you define yourself as early stage, or do you define yourself as ideation, or do you define yourself as growth stage? So that viral pathway, diagram can give you more insights into it. But yeah, ideally, once you know this, hopefully this stage bit, you can be able to then, look through and see where should I fundraise from. So for instance, if you're in the ideation stage, then ideally you should go for grant providers. Grant providers nowadays also give up to $1 million. I think recently we had, I don't know whether, we had of a company that received 1 million, I think from Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, grant financing. Obviously, again, as I mentioned, remember grants nowadays not just pure grant, but some grants are very milestone-based grants. Some are returnable as well. And then grant finances, remember I said when you're building your investment tracker or investor tracker, you should ideally also know where the investors are getting their money from. So that helps you engage or see, how much more should I embrace this investor, or how much more time do I have with this investor? So if you're in the growth, if you're in the early stage, then you ideally should be going for high net worth individuals, and of course they get their money from their own personal wealth. If you're in the typically, you could also go for impact investors in this place. Impact investors, nowadays we have impact investing funds, but the funds are institutional, meaning they're corporate funds. So they also come in at the early to growth stage, and most of them get their financing from family foundations, and others get their financing from limited partners and general partners. Yeah, so this was just sort of an example to tell you, okay, if you're looking for 10 to 100K, where do you get your money from? If you're looking to raise between 50 to 10 million, where do you get your money from? Right. So yeah, so we go to the fourth, which is, so what does an investor technically look for before investing in your business? Ideally, remember we said all investors want some sort and form of return, whether it's return as cash or whether it's return in kind. So even grant financiers, they want returns, but their only returns are, milestones. What have you been able to achieve? And that's why you see, some grant financiers usually have like a long laundry list of, reporting structures that you should be able to provide them. That's their return at that point. If it's a commercial funder, obviously they want, cash or investments in cash, something of that nature. They also want to invest in an entrepreneur who gives them peace of mind, meaning you're not always in courts here and there doing litigations and whatnot. And then finally, they want a smooth exit. Remember, whereas these are the basic fundamental, we can break this down further into what exactly they look for. And this is it. So it's come to us, even investment banker vis-a-vis an investor. What they look for are like, I've separated them into like 4 thematic areas. But remember, various investors have different criteria, what they look at and what's fundamental to them as a fund. But ideally, the most basic are they will evaluate your team. And when I say team here, some entrepreneurs usually think, nah, I'm good on team. I think I'm very good on team. But really, that's not the case. Because, for instance, I'll give you an example. We did have a company that had about 6 scientists on the team. And yes, if you look at the scientists, they're very knowledgeable. There's industry experience. But do you think that's a fair team to invest in? No. You know why? Because then they lack they lack business development skills, they lack financial skills. So whereas they have the technical expertise, the team is not complementary, and that's something we also look at. So that's something you as an entrepreneur should also keep in mind, to ensure that yes, you have a complementary team. Then obviously we look at your educational qualifications, and when I say educational qualifications, I don't mean all the good entrepreneurs are actually the ones with the PhDs and masters. No, it's just something for us to fall back to in case everything else does not work out. But ultimately, it paints a picture for us in terms of your grit as an entrepreneur. Further, we also look at the talent in your team. We don't just assess you, the promoter, or you, the founder or co-founder. We also assess, the rest of the team. How does your talent pool look like? Are they complementary to you? How many do you have in your team? Especially if you're an early stage company and you're paying your team, have you gone to employ 50 people in your team, yet you cannot be able to survive the cash flow of paying 50 people in a team? So things like that. Then we also look at business model evaluation. What's the potential to scale? What's the potential for your company to be sustainable? And these I'm speaking specifically from an early stage point of view. That scalability is something that we take really strongly, or we look at strongly. If you're able to survive. And then again, I could not emphasize this. Market analysis. Who are your competitors in the market? Is there a big dog running? Is there a big dog running the industry? And so you cannot necessarily penetrate with your own business. So those are the things that we also look at. And then finally, possible exit routes. We also look at financial analysis, which is most important. It's also financial analysis paints for us a picture of, can you be sustainable, and and are you able to sort of absorb the amount of funding that you'll be given? Ultimately, you can't be a business that's doing what? That's doing 500,000 Kenyan shillings and you're looking for 10 million US dollars. Honestly, we won't even, no one will touch you just because, you've not built up that grit, or that's the assumption you have in mind, that there's no grit to be able to absorb that 10 million. Yeah, so we would also look at your financial analysis. What has been the trend in terms of your revenues? How have your ratios improved? And this is something that if you do not have the expertise, you could go to an accountant, they could build for you the 3 statements, and then you can, get your trends from that. And then impact evaluation. The reason I added this is because we as Intellecap, we are impact. We are an impact firm looking to support people living at the bottom of the pyramid. So impact is quite important to us. And now, even if you go to impact, investors, this is something that look at. Nowadays, even the commercial investors are looking at something we call ESG, meaning environmental social governance, which can be tweaked to be impact. So they look at, how much carbon are you saving if it's environment, how much waste are you saving, how many people are you employing, that means livelihood, how much, financing are you putting back to their pocket. So those are some of the evaluation factors. I'm just rushing through this, and then, what capital or instruments are there in the market? I'll stop there and see if I have any questions at this point. So how do you attract a complementary team when you're bootstrapping? So if you're bootstrapping, it does not necessarily mean you do not have money, first of all. It means, yes, you do have money, but the financing may not be quite enough, right? So you're plowing back, the returns that you're getting into your business. So if you're attracting a team, what I have seen work for some people is, especially if this team, if it's a team member that that has the necessary skills, has the necessary industry expertise, has the right educational background, has the right technical expertise as well. Then some people give, employee share options. So they say, what, I do not have money to pay you for now, but I can give you 2% of my company if you agree to come along as a co-founder. So that's an option that's there. However, I would want to warn you, the entrepreneur, especially at an early stage company level, if you bring someone in exchange of equity, you should be very sure that this is a very top-notch team member who would add value to your team and be able to help you either subsequently fundraise. Because the reason for that is, if you actually ultimately end up being successful or being sustainable, or the business becomes successful, then it means this employee owns it's a small piece of a big cake. So they'll own 2%, but of a very big company, which makes a lot of difference. So you have to be very careful when you're bringing someone on board and taking up that option. Otherwise, the other option could be, you could, come talk to us, not us, but, talk to the team, the potential team member, and say, hey, this is the current situation, but I'm looking, to turn this around in the next 6 months or 7 months, 6 to 12 months. So if you could come in on a voluntary basis, or come in for the next 6 to 12 months, and then after that you give them a promissory of being fully employed in the team, then also those are options that we've seen working in the market. So there's another question on what if your business does not align with an investor? Okay. That we answered a bit. So what capital instrument do you use? I'll rush through this one. But there's many instruments that's there. But the 4 fundamental ones that I'm putting forth today, equity, grants, debt, and convertible. But otherwise, there is, types of debt. You could find mezzanine debt, types of convertibles. You could find safe notes. You could find keys. Keeping it simple, securities, types of grants. You could find, what I keep saying, milestone-based grants. There's nowadays, milestone-based grants or returnable grants. There's other forms of financing, meaning results-based financing. or outcome-based financing. There's other forms of financing where you're given on a revenue share basis. So there's a lot of instruments in the market, but ultimately the fundamentals are these four. So yeah, I'll quickly rush through this, and if you just allow me to take a sip of water.
You're doing great, Mercy. You could sip your water. I mean,
okay.
Everybody is learning quite a bit. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, perfect. Yeah, so there's equity. There's trade equity. As I mentioned, this is money in exchange of shareholding. But when do you raise equity? Because that's a very common question that we hear from entrepreneurs. Oh, I want to fundraise, but I'm not sure I want to give away a percentage of my company, so I think I'll go for debt. But that's not the best way to make that decision. Usually, how you come to the decision of what instrument to use when raising is, first of all, you look at what do I need the money for. So for instance, if you look at the money, if you look at the uses of financing, and you see, oh, I need it for operating expenses, meaning I need it for hiring, I need it for marketing, increasing my sales, then the best option for you to do in that case is raise equity. And the reason for this is because it takes some time before that that specific activity converts back to revenue. Meaning, for instance, if you're raising $50,000 and you're hoping to use it for marketing, obviously it will take some time before your marketing then turn around to become revenue. So you need someone who's quote unquote patient to be able to do that. Unfortunately, some entrepreneurs usually think, I'll go for equity because it's the cheapest financing. I don't have to repay. I just give away my shareholding. It's a piece of paper anyway. But see, that's the wrong notion to have. Because sometimes you find that equity is actually more expensive than debt. You just won't feel it in the immediate time, but when your business grows and you realize, oh, I gave 40% to my company, and now the company is worth $10 million, then you start feeling the sense of the 40%, especially when you're sharing out the dividends. So yeah, so do not be tied into that cocoon of equity is less expensive than debt, or I could easily raise debt in this market. Currently, as we speak, most of the investors that I have come across, and this is from a personal level, are equity investors, especially in this market. And I think the reason for that is because there is many early stage companies, and so an investor usually wants, remember, equity financing is you're giving shareholding, right? So an investor wants to be part of the team, part of the shareholders, and understand, okay, what's the strategic direction that this company is taking, etc. So yeah, I'll rush. Oh, sorry. So yeah, just nuggets of raising equity. Remember, marriage and equity are similar. You want to understand the investor as they are understanding your business. You also want to understand them. In as much as they have a decision to make on whether to invest in you, you as the entrepreneur also has the decision to make whether to take them up. So yeah, so remember there's that. And then you need to choose the right investor. You don't want to end up with a shareholder that is very troublesome. So you're seeing your strategic direction is to expand into Uganda, but then they're telling you, no, I think you should go to Tanzania. And you find that because of the terms that you've given them, veto rights, whatnot, in the term sheet, they have a say over you. So yeah, so you want to be very careful that yes, that you're very comfortable to deal with them and it's the right investor for your business. I'll not go through the pros and cons. I feel like this is really book. You can go and read this in your online or in your books, whatnot. Debt again. So when do you raise debt financing? If you're looking for working capital, if you're looking for capex expenditures, meaning you're looking to buy land or you're looking to buy a car, or you're looking to finance your business to buy stock, then that's the best place to go. You should raise debt financing. Meaning, yes, they're giving you money, and then you're repaying. Now, there's secured and unsecured debt. Of course, secured debt, you get collateral in exchange of money, and secured debt, there's no collateral tied to it. If you do come to the side of angel investing, and it's an angel investor giving you debt, they're more flexible. And when I say debt, I don't just necessarily mean banks. risks. I also mean venture debt, as I had started saying in the beginning. So yeah, so they are quite flexible. Sometimes you hear terms like, oh, I'm giving you debt on the dollar. So you should be, you as an entrepreneur, remember again, as I say, ignorance is not defense. So you as an entrepreneur should be able to understand that, yes, what does it mean to get debt on the dollar? Does it make the loan or debt quite expensive or less expensive for me? Of course, in the angel investment side, they're more, lax a bit. So you'll find they're giving you more grace period, things like that. So that's up to you to negotiate with the investor. Then I'll skip this as well, just because I think this is something you could easily come across online. There's different advantages, there's different disadvantages. The idea here is that you should be able to understand, are you, what outweighs the other in your own scenario? Is the advantage better? Is the disadvantage better? Then you have convertible notes. Convertible notes are what's more common, or what we advise for entrepreneurs to raise, especially in this market, especially if you've not really decided how much percentage of equity you're willing to give, then this is an option for you. Remember the question you'd asked before about how much is too much on shareholding. So if you're not quite sure how much is too much, then probably straight equity is not an option for you, but a convertible note. A convertible note is basically a capital instrument that takes, characteristics of both debt and equity. Meaning, if I give you $100,000 in convertible note today, I am hoping, and then I tell you, okay, this convertible note is going to mature in 3 years. I'm hoping in the next 3 years, so you're going to give me back, interest. You're going to pay me back the interest, and then my principal amount would then convert into an equity shareholding after the end of 3 years. And there's different, if I would have had time, I would have taken you through what aspects of the convertible notes to negotiate. But ideally, you're given, or is it in the next slide? Yeah, it's in the next slide. Yeah. So first of all, there's two types. Well, not two types. There's safe notes. Probably some of you have heard about safe notes. This is a note that was, designed by Y Combinator. It's very standard. I think there's even a free template online. I could be wrong, but just check online and see whether you could get a safe template online. Ideally, it's very standard. It says, okay, you'll not accrue any interest. You have your maturity dates. So entrepreneurs, because of how standard it is, entrepreneurs usually prefer to go the safe way. There's also keep it simple securities, and that's part of this as well. But some of the characteristics of a convertible are, again, as I say, you'll pay the interest. So either you pay the interest, or the interest actually accrues till the third, and I'm using third year here. I'm not saying that's the standard, I'm just using it as an example, as the maturity date, meaning that's when the note is actually maturing. I hope I'm not losing anyone at this point. And then again, it's just like that. In the beginning, it does not come with voting rights until and unless it converts into equity. That's when it has voting rights. And then the whole, if you decided that the interest rate would be accrued, the whole amount then would convert back to equity as a full principal plus interest. Others prefer that they're paying interest, and then the principal would then convert. Sometimes we have things such as valuation caps, meaning you tell, depending on, and I think this one would have made sense if I had really explained how much percentage to give on equity. But usually, if the note is converting in 3 years and you have a valuation cap, it basically protects the earlier investors. Meaning, even if your valuation is going to be 10 million, we have a valuation cap of $10,000. So my financing is going to convert at $10,000 and not necessarily at $10 million when other investors are coming in. We can talk about this the whole day, but I'll skip it for now, and hopefully, fingers crossed, that some of you have at least gotten one or two things from here. So some of the pros and cons for this are, some of the pros are it's faster, as we say, especially depending on the market and investor, if they already understand this type of equity. and this is something you could ask upfront to an investor. You could ask them, oh, so yeah, you give financing, but what type of capital do you use? Do you use debt? Do you use equity, convertibles? Another pro is that, you're delaying placing a valuation, meaning you're delaying that conversation about how much percentage should I give. So you're delaying it to up to the year that the note converts. And then sometimes it's very ideal for raising bridge rounds. I won't talk about that now because I see most of us are really early. But ideally, if I've already raised 10 million and then I'm looking to raise 20 more million and it's taking me a year or so to raise, so I could actually raise a convertible note in the meantime before I actually raise my other 20 million that I'm looking to raise. Some of the disadvantages is that, if you're not very careful about, the future of your company, you could end up giving a very large equity stake, in your company. For instance, you had set the valuation cap at 10,000, and then now the valuation is, $1 million. So of course, the early investors get a big chunk of, of that stake, of the shares. So that would be a con. And then remember, you're also predetermining the valuation cap, which is what I've just talked about, and the conversion price. So that's a disadvantage because, again, it's going to favor the investor over you, the entrepreneur. And then if there's no alignment between you and the investor, sometimes alignment between the early investors and the new investors that are coming in cause friction. So you want to be very careful when raising a convertible. Then grant financing, I won't go through this in detail because I think you already have this in mind. Some of the nuggets are, you want to write a grant proposal, then you want to focus on the needs of the potential funder, not necessarily yours. I mean, of course, yours is important as well, but focus more on, this is what I can do for you as a potential funder. If the objective is to increase the health outcomes in Kenya, then you want to position your business in a way that you say, yes, I can save X number of lives if I distribute my medicine towards people living in Kawangware or Kangemi, whichever, or bottom of the pyramid. Yeah. Then your company should be well aligned. Your mission and objectives should be well aligned as theirs, and ensure you understand clearly what the financial goals are. I won't go through this as well, but yeah, I thought I would have time to go through some of this, but it's really an illustration on. If you look here, I have mentioned some examples on some of the companies who provide debt financing in this market and what type of capital they do provide, and quick description. So I know Larry will share this with you much later. So that's that. So lastly, I know I've rushed through this, but I'll pause in case there is any question. Okay, none. Okay, got it. So what are the tips when you're fundraising? Remember, don't raise too little. Again, as I started by saying, Alvin, to your point, hopefully you're still on the call, yes. It's very hard to raise financing in this market. So don't raise too little. Raise something that would give you a runway of about 3 or so years. Because you don't want to keep coming back into the market, you're trying to fundraise always. And of course, in this market, if I say that, you already have examples of companies in the market that do that. Focus on minimizing asset expenditure. What I mean here is investors do not generally love investing in land or investing in vehicles or investing in very tangible long-term assets. That's not really the alignment. Of course, there are some that do, and some, of course, if you make your case, they'll be like, oh, okay, I see that this company really needs a plan to keep distributing, but that's not something they are excited about, and so be very careful. So you want to build your base as an entrepreneur so that when you're going out to fundraise, it's easier to fundraise for operating expenses than it is to fundraise for capital expenditures. So be very careful about that. Because the reason is they want to see, oh, you have skin in the game. So if you can be able to buy your own land or you can be able to buy your own equipment, then why should I not trust you with money to hire people? Something of that nature. Again, as I said, raise capital that's needed for 12 to 18 months. It could even go up to 3 years, as I mentioned. Remember, marriage equity is the same. Be very careful of who you're selecting. Make sure to do due diligence on them in as much as they're doing due diligence on you. And then, of course, you already know within your networks, you already know some of the investors. Start with those ones. Start with the low-hanging fruits, and then build your portfolio upwards. It's okay to raise grant financing, but don't make a habit of it because it's softer money. In fact, come to us and say, oh, yes, I've raised financing before and I've raised grant financing. And then ultimately we ask you, how much have you raised in grant financing? And you tell me 10 million. Okay, so how much commercial capital have you actually raised? 0. Then there's a red flag there. Meaning, you as an entrepreneur are very happy to take soft money that you're not necessarily returning. Like, even if you don't return, it's okay. They won't take me to court or something of that nature. So when you see that, it's actually a red flag. So you want to make sure that, yes, you raised here and there some sort of commercial capital, because it shows us the grit again. As an entrepreneur, it shows us, okay, you can be able to manage and handle, commercial financing. Again, as I like to emphasize, equity is not necessarily cheaper than debt. It could actually be more expensive, especially if your business is poised to scale. It could actually be more, expensive. And then lastly, when you're raising debt financing, ensure you have enough capital to keep repaying, enough cash flow to keep repaying your monthly installments or quarterly installments, depending on how you've agreed with the investor, so that you're not cash flow negative, and yet you're supposed to keep running the business. So I think I'll stop there in case there's any questions.
Yeah. Okay, unless there are any questions, I'd like to really say, Mercy, this is some good stuff, man. There's so much, well, very few jargon and lots to learn. There's so much you've really brought on the table. I think most of which are startups without the knowledge we struggle with and don't really dig deeper, because what we want is the money. We want to move, yet we don't know that we could be selling ourselves to the devil himself. Mm-hmm. So this has been quite some good information. So I don't know if there's anyone who would like to, put something on the charts, or anyone who would like to say something, because I'm wrapping this up in the next few minutes. I'm supposed to jump into another call. Any question through the chats? I see something. Okay. Yeah, Daniel has been really, Daniel's really enjoying the session. And yes, you'll receive this in your emails, the recording, and also Mercy will get the presentation email to you so that we could keep this conversation going. Intellecap, Mercy is within reach. So Daniel, I think Daniel says he'd want also to have a one-on-one chat with you, Mercy. Daniel comes from Nigeria, I believe. And you never know what you could get out of that area of the world. There are quite some aggressive people on that side. So yes, so as I'm winding this up, because I don't see anybody, what is your level at Intellecap in angel investing? Question from Alvin to you, Mercy.
Yeah, so I co-lead the investment network, but other than that, I'm a senior associate, at Intellecap. I hope that answers it. Okay.
Senior associate at Intellecap. Yes, this was quite a very good way to end the year. I just wanted us to end in a way where come next year, we have all the information for us to handle 2021. Now that we are told every year you should at least step in with one leg inside, because 2020 has showed us that you never know what is on the other side. Yeah. So Mercy, we really appreciate. Thank you for taking your time. Thank you for just bringing some wonderful information towards our side. And we really welcome any other networks you have in your own network of people who you think could be of value to us with such kind of information, or those who feel they can speak. We really invite them to start a Grind, for them to come and pass our loving, grateful, that's a bad English, our heartfelt gratefulness. Damn, I just messed it. Yes, our appreciation to Intellecap and the team. And this was quite awesome. So wonderful people. I know Our Lady Vasilai Jijenge Academy's video didn't play, but what I'll do is I'll include it in the video clip that I'll send you in your emails. so that you could listen to her 1-minute pitch. And on top of that, since she sent in her pitch, what she'll get from us is she will get the free access to the AWS credits that I talked about before. And I'll also make sure she's also enrolled, not make sure, it also has to be checked with the people on the other side. Well, I'll have her have access to our startup program. We have something called startup program where now your startup idea or whatever you're doing at whatever stage it is, it's taken on board with Startup Grind, and they now give you one-to-one interaction with investors from here, there, and all over the world. People in the industry, they could help you with resource mobilization, or people who are skilled in areas that you need that for. So that's something that our good friend who sent in a pitch would be able to have benefit for his startup. I'm saying this because next time I hope those who are in this call would also take advantage of such opportunities, because our work at Startup Grind is to create them, and it's for you now to bring yourself up. It's as simple as you doing a pitch or sending a pre-recorded pitch for us to understand what you're all about. If you had done that today, who knows, Mercy would have just wanted to, talk to you after this call. With that said, if anybody else has this, Mercy, go ahead.
I'm sorry. Yeah, you just mentioned that, and then it hit my mind. We are taking applications currently. Actually, the applications are closing on 15th of December. I think that's next week, early next week. And we're looking for enterprises who actually we will showcase to our, network of investors. So that's closing on 15th. I'll send Larix the link. If you know anyone who could benefit from this, and it's across Africa, so not just within East Africa. So if you're interested, and of course I'll also share with Larix the criteria that we're using. So if you do fit, please feel free to apply.
Awesome. See, I was just playing around with words, and we already have something good out of that. So yeah, and I also pray that all those of you, man, where's my English going? When you're live, everything just goes down the drain. All those who made it, I just pray that next time you could at least tag a friend, because these are conversations that we shouldn't just have on our own. We really need to empower our fellow men, fellow women, if we want to make it in Africa. The world that is following after this COVID situation is a world where countries are able to take care of themselves with their own resources. And this is the perfect opportunity for us to do that. Anybody who wants to speak, I could give you, how much time do I have? Yeah, I have like 2 minutes. Anybody else to speak? I could enable you. Just say on the chat, hey, I want to say something quick before I end this call. Anyone going once, going twice? Thank you very much for your time, Mercy. So I'll end it at that, and I wish everybody a wonderful December and enjoy your Christmas. Call me, especially if the food is good. If it's bad, well, don't bother. Okay, bye. I'm going to stop the recording.